sandwiches, ice cream, coffee and snacks, and many other pleasing treats. Our foods are fresh and tasty, our drinks satisfying and refreshing. They're so good.
Welcome to Average Joe's Drive-In.
And now, on with the show.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 75 of Average Joe's Drive-In. This is a midsummer horror review cast. I've been watching a lot of horror movies lately because I've just been in that type of mood, so this episode is going to focus on horror movies. I hope everyone's been having a great summer so far. I should be back on a regular weekly schedule with my guest. I had some internet issues that was preventing me from doing some of the regular interview episodes because it was just too difficult to do them where I do a lot of them over Skype. So I've unfortunately had to rearrange a few of them, and there's been a few other issues here and there. So hopefully everything's back on track, and just to give you a heads up, next week is my 1-year anniversary episode of the show. I'm still working on some details for that, but I'm going to try to put together something really cool for you guys. So let's get to it with our first review, and that is 1984's Children of the Corn.
Every child is afraid of the dark, the unknown, the nightmare. In Gatlin, Nebraska, that nightmare is in the corn. Stephen King's Children of the Corn.
Praise God! Praise the Lord!
From Stephen King, the author of Carrie, The Shining, The Dead Zone, and Christine, an adult nightmare. Children of the Corn.
I'm here, Lord! I'm ready!
Stephen King's Children of the Corn, an adult nightmare.
The genre is horror thriller, directed by Fritz Kirsch, has a 92-minute runtime. It is rated R, stars Peter Horton, Linda Hamilton, and R.G. Armstrong. I watched this one on Netflix. Synopsis. As physician Bert Stanton and his girlfriend Vicky drive across the Midwest to his new job, their trip comes to a sudden halt when they encounter the body of a murdered boy in the road. In trying to contact the authorities, Bert and Vicky wander into a small town populated only by children, followers of a sinister young preacher named Isaac Kroner. Soon, the couple is fleeing the youthful fanatics who want to sacrifice them to their demonic deity. I have seen this one several times over the years, but it had been a while since my last viewing. I wanted a shorter King adaptation, so I decided to go with this, partly because it was the first one I came across and I hadn't watched it in a while. This is a middle-of-the-road film, one that often gets lambasted by people as being outright horrible. I think it's far from horrible. Sure, it's not in the upper echelon of Stephen King film adaptations, but it certainly isn't near the bottom of the barrel drivel that some adaptations are. It's a serviceable enough film. It moves along at a decent pace. The cinematography is good. The score is creepy. The acting's okay, but it's not the strong point of the film. I will admit I did find the kids creepy. The cold, calculated brutality in which they wield their evil is unsettling. One thing about the film I never cared for and still don't care for is the ending. It's very cliche and, no pun intended, corny. Obviously, there is something about this film and story people like. It spawned a crazy amount of sequels, which I can't honestly say I've ever seen any of. I wonder sometimes if I should try and snag one of the collections and give them a watch. Every time I contemplate doing that, I don't pull the trigger. There's a little button going off in my head that screams, "Don't do it! It's a trap!" All those poor reviews keep me from doing it. But each time I think, but what if? Who knows, maybe one of these days I'll take the plunge for better or worse and see what I've been missing. My rating for this was a 5.5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 5.6 out of 10. And on a side note, I recently was given parts 2 and 3 on DVD, so I will be checking those out at some point in the near future. Up next, one of my all-time favorites, 1986's Critters.
Of all the planets in the galaxy, they chose ours. They hide in small places.
This phone is dead.
What?
They light the dark.
Jay, any luck?
Just a minute.
There's nothing cute about them. They've come a long way, and they're hungry.
And they're getting bigger.
Critters. They bite.
This is a comedy, horror, sci-fi, directed by Stephen Herrick, has an 86-minute runtime, rated PG-13, stars Dee Wallace, M. Emmett Walsh, and Billy Greenbush. I watched this on DVD. Synopsis. When strange, fuzzy creatures from outer space arrive on a farm, the Brown family, Jay, Helen, their daughter April, and their son Brad, must fend off the malevolent little aliens. Two bounty hunters with superhuman abilities follow the aggressive beasts from beyond. But the warriors aren't terribly effective, leaving the Brown family to battle the furballs and rescue April from their clutches all by themselves. Critters has long been one of my favorite sci-fi horror films. I was a huge fan of this movie long before I went down the rabbit hole of horror geekdom. It's one of those films I can break out at any given time and watch. I've lost track of the number of times I've seen this, but it never wanes on me. I still enjoy it as much now, if not more than I did when I first saw it. Part of the reason this film has always been so endearing to me is the fact that it's a good balance of old school 50s sci-fi schlock, comedy, and light horror. The critter effects are great, and I've always thought the acting was perfect. Not so much so because it's next level, because it fits the tone of the movie so well. To me, this has always been the epitome of what a fun genre film should be. Even as much as I love the film, I realize there are flaws. I can accept those and roll with the punches because of the joy this film gives me. It's hard to explain, but we've all got those films we can overlook things others might see as faults. Critters is one of those films for me. If you've never watched this movie and love both sci-fi and horror, you need to track this one down. My rating for this is a 7.5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 6 out of 10. Up next is 2017's Happy Death Day.
Oh, hey, you're up.
Am I in a dorm room?
Yeah, I folded your pants for you.
Great.
Dude, did you get that or what?
Don't show it's your birthday.
Stop global warming.
Party like it's your birthday. We gon' sip and party like it's your
You
birthday.
sneaky little biatch. Maybe you should switch to water next time. Super helpful. Don't be late to the party tonight.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Tree, happy birthday.
You can find me in the club, bottle full of bub. Look, mommy, I got the head sitting in the taking drugs. I'm in the habit.
scared me.
Hey, you're up.
Look, I know this isn't gonna make any sense.
Stop global warming?
I feel like I'm losing my mind.
You sneaky little biatch.
Happy birthday. I've already lived through this day. Somebody's gonna kill me tonight. So you're getting here now.
Is everything okay?
Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Assuming that I believe any of this is even possible.
Sprinklers? Car alarm?
The way I see it, you have unlimited amount of lives. Unlimited opportunities to solve your own murder.
So I'm supposed to keep dying until I figure out who my killer is?
You want to live to see tomorrow, right? Whoever's killing you knows it's your birthday.
Pretty much the entire school knows.
These are signs of major trauma. You should be dead.
You relive the same day over and over again. Kind of start to see who you really are.
I did it! Woo!
All units, we've got a 187.
This is a horror mystery thriller directed by Christopher Landon, has a 96-minute runtime, rated PG-13, stars Jessica Roth, Israel Broussard, and Ruby Modine. I watched this one on DVD. Synopsis. Tree Geldman is a blissfully self-centered collegian who wakes up on her birthday in the bed of a student named Carter. As the morning goes on, Tree gets the eerie feeling that she's experienced the events of this day before. When a mass killer suddenly takes her life in a brutal attack, she once again magically wakes up in Carter's dorm room unharmed. Now, the frightened young woman must relive the same day over and over until she figures out who murdered her. I've had this one on the radar for a while, but like with most modern horror movies, I'd heard very mixed reviews. So, I hadn't really gone out of my way to review it. I had a 2-for-1 rental deal and wanted a horror flick, so I decided to snag it and give it a watch. I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this. Frankly, in the beginning, you hate the character of Tree, played fantastically by Jessica Roth. She's the epitome of a snobby, spoiled, self-centered, too pretty for her own good bitch. The type of character you can't stand and almost root for bad things to happen to. The film moves along, and somewhere around the midway point, your opinion starts to change a bit as different things come to light. This is PG-13 horror done right. Too often, the lack of gore and other elements make the film feel held back. In this instance, it did not. I would describe this film as a weird mesh between the classic 80s film, April Fool's Day, and the comedy Groundhog's Day. There were similarities of both films in there, and I think you'd be hard-pressed not to notice them if you're a fan of those films. I'm not sure how well this one would hold up on repeat viewings, but if I came across a copy for cheap, I'd snag it. If you're on the fence about this one, give it a chance and form your own opinion. I'm glad I did. My rating was a 6 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 6.5 out of 10. Up next, 2006, Hatchet.
Once upon a time, there was a boy named Victor Crowley. Folks weren't too kind to Victor, so he stayed hidden in his daddy's house, out in the bayou. One night, some mean children came to his house, and there was a bad fire. When his daddy chopped down the door to save him, he didn't know Victor was pressed against the other side. and poor Victor Crowley died. They say people disappear in those woods. And legend has it, if you get close enough to the old Crowley house at night, you can still hear Victor Crowley roaming in the woods, crying for his dad.
I want to go home. We're all gonna die.
This is a horror comedy directed by Adam Green. Has a runtime of 85 minutes. It is unrated. Stars Kane Hodder, Joel David Moore, and Dion Richmond. I watched this one on DVD. Synopsis. Ben and Marcus are college students in New Orleans enjoying Mardi Gras when they decide to go on a boat tour of an alleged cursed bayou. Meeting up with several other tourists, including quietly beautiful Mary Beth, they are entertained by their guide Sean, who regales them with tales of a ghostly serial killer who wanders the swamp. They laugh off the stories until someone or something starts picking off members of the group. It's been a while since I watched the original Hatchet. 2, 3, and Victor Crowley were all viewed over the last year or so, but I hadn't gotten around to revisiting the original. It was one of those nights where I needed some good old-fashioned, gory, old-school feeling fun, so I figured it was time to throw it on. Everything I enjoyed about this film holds up. It has a great 80s vibe to it, it's shot well, the effects are top-notch, and it's over the top in all the right ways. One thing I always liked about this film was it doesn't dawdle along. It gets right to the carnage and delivers in spades. Sometimes, for me, that was a bit different than my previous viewing, was the fact I'd watched the other films in the series fairly recently, which only made me enjoy and appreciate this even more. There's just enough dark humor in this to balance out the sheer brutality of it. As a fan of 70s and 80s slashers like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the like, I love that someone paid homage to those types of films but added their own modern twist. If you're a fan of that era of horror, you should give this series a chance. More than likely you'll enjoy. My rating was a 7 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 5.7 out of 10. And speaking of 80s horrors, up next is 1985's House.
This is a house where no one should live.
Woman lived here before you was nuts. Wouldn't be surprised if someone just got fed up and offed her. She was my aunt. Heart of gold, though.
Roger Cobb has come here alone.
Daddy?
But no one is ever alone in the house.
This house knows everything about you. Leave while you can.
No! It has been waiting for him.
Hi.
Sandy.
Now, it wants you. Horror has found a new home. House. Enter at your own risk.
This is a comedy fantasy horror directed by Steve Miner, has a 93-minute runtime, rated R, stars William Catt, Kay Lenz, and George Wendt. I watched this one on Shudder. A Vietnam vet turned horror novelist returns to his boyhood home to find that it has been invaded by ghosts and ghouls. This is one I hadn't seen since the early 90s and have wanted to give another watch for a while. So needless to say, I was delighted when I saw it on Shudder. I absolutely adore this movie. I forgot how much this movie kicks ass. It has just the right amount of comedy mixed with the horror aspects. The effects are awesome. They walk the line between being comical and creepy. William Katt is perfect in this. He nails the role and really gets you into the character. For me, this is one of those unheralded 80s gems. One that really doesn't get enough attention. Myself included doesn't give this one enough attention. There are some plot issues and a few things that will make you scratch your head. But because the movie is so enjoyable, it's easy to forgive them. While House may not be perfect, it sure the hell is a lot of fun. If you've never seen it, I suggest you track it down and give it a watch. I'll be throwing on the sequel, which I have never watched, in the very near future. My rating is a 6.5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 6.2 out of 10. Up next, another one that's a favorite of mine. I've just been in the mood to revisit some favorites and stuff that I haven't seen for a while. And that is 1988's Killer Klowns from Outer Space.
Like any other night, then something happened. You see that? Something different.
There's no shooting star.
Why here? Why now? Why clowns? They've been knocking them dead all over the universe.
What are you gonna do? Knock my block off?
Killer Klowns from Outer Space.
Maybe they're just cruising through the galaxy and stopped here for a bite to eat.
You don't need a police pal, you need a psychiatrist.
They want to play games? They're messing with the wrong guy.
What are you in for?
Killer Klowns from Outer Space. It's crazy.
This one is a comedy horror sci-fi, directed by Steven Chiodo, has an 88-minute runtime, rated PG-13, stars Grant Kramer, Suzanne Snyder, and John Allen Nelson. I watched this one on Blu-ray. Synopsis. When teenagers Mike and Debbie see a comet crash outside their sleepy small town, they investigate and discover a pack of murderous aliens who look very much like circus clowns. They try to warn the local authorities, but everyone assumes their story is a prank. Meanwhile, the clowns set about harvesting and eating as many people as they can. It's not until they kidnap Debbie that Mike decides it's up to him to stop the clowns' bloody rampage. This is another film I once had in my collection. In fact, it was one of the first DVDs I ever bought. This has long been one of those cheesy favorites of mine. I saw this long before I was ever super into horror, much like Critters. Looking back, this was one of those films that started me down the path of horror fandom. I came across the used Blu-ray copy for cheap and snagged it. While I really wanted to get the deluxe version Arrow has out, I couldn't justify paying close to $30 for it. I love those companies and what they are doing, but you have to be picky about which ones you drop that type of cash on. At least I do anyway. The transfer on the version I got was very good. Everything looked clear and there were some good extras on it. Most of which were on the DVD version I had, if I remember correctly. The film itself is just as schlocky and fun as ever. This is one of those movies that feel like it has barely aged. It's just the right blend of 80s horror and 50s sci-fi camp. One movie I've always compared it to was The Blob. It has that same sort of feel. Even if it is a bit on the cheesy side, it's so much fun you don't care. The acting ranges from good to just flat out bad, the effects still hold up remarkably well, and the clowns themselves are creepy as all hell. It's weird because they do look goofy, but then they smile and it takes a turn for the sinister. The score really cements the film for me. It balances out everything and enhances the movie for the better. Is this movie perfect? Absolutely not. It does have issues, but for me, it's one of those lightning in a bottle films. Right place, right time, and right subject matter. I'm not so sure something like this could be done today and pulled off in the same manner. Killer Klowns from Outer Space is still an absolute blast and one I'm glad to have back in my collection. My rating is a 7 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 6.1 out of 10. Up next, something a little more modern, and that is 2017's Party Bus to Hell.
On a party bus? Heading to the Burning Man Festival? This bus Hey! 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 Are we there?
It's them. They're here. We're surrounded. They're listening. They hear everything we're saying. Your deepest, darkest fears.
Everybody, we're just making a quick pit stop.
It's making you crazy? I'll show you crazy.
It's gonna be the night of your life. This is all my fault.
But I'm not the leader. I'm just a servant to the chosen one.
The genre is horror, directed by Rolf Kanefsky, has an 81-minute runtime, rated TVMA, stars Tara Reid, Sadie Katz, and Divian Penn. I watched this on DVD. Synopsis. A party bus en route to Burning Man breaks down in the middle of the desert among a satanic cult. A massacre leaves survivors trapped on the bus, fighting for their lives and panicked that someone is not what they seem. I had no idea what to expect with this one. What I ended up getting was a gory, nudity-filled, weird flick, and truthfully, it worked rather well. This one harkened back to early 80s horror, mixed with a slight touch of that modern era feel. In a lot of ways, it's a heavy metal music video turned into a horror film. The effects, for the most part, are pretty damn solid. There are a few things here and there that look cheesy, but overall, like I said, they were solid. The acting isn't groundbreaking, but was serviceable enough it didn't ruin the film. It was shot fairly well, and I had no issues with most of the technical aspects of the film. Sure, this has some issues and dumb decisions and actions by the characters, but for the most part, I actually found this to be enjoyable. It doesn't try too hard to be anything more than an oddball gory horror flick. I'm okay with that because sometimes that's just what you need. Like a lot of my reviews, take it with a grain of salt. This is going to appeal to a certain group of people and probably be loathed by others, but whatever, to each their own. My rating is a 6 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 5.4 out of 10. And as on a side note, I was talking to a few friends about this, and they brought up they were kind of hesitant to watch it because Tara Reid's in it. Well, Tara Reid isn't really in this very much, so if that's keeping you from viewing this one, take the chance. And if you like really gory, kind of twisted horror, then this one's pretty decent. So give it a chance. minus the Tara Reid. And for my last 3 reviews, I'm going to review 3 films that I haven't watched in a while, but part of a series that I enjoy the hell out of, and that's the Jaws franchise. I recently reviewed the first Jaws, I believe on the last Reviewcast, the one before, I can't remember. But up first is 1978's Jaws 2.
Jaws 2. The terror continues. In all the vast and unknown depths of the ocean, how could there have been only one?
Chief Brody, can we go, please?
I think we may have another shark problem. Are you serious?
Roy Scheider.
Hey, look, there's my dad! The whole beach looks incredible.
Lorraine Gary. And Murray Hamilton.
Look at this. That's a shark. Out of the water now! Look, Brody, you started a panic on a public beach. Now, what if somebody decides to sue us? That's a shark. Did you ever stop to think about that?
And I know what a shark looks like because I've seen one up close. And you better do something about this one because I don't intend to go through that hell again.
Don't press it this time.
Mike is out there.
None of man's fantasies of evil can compare with the reality of Jaws.
This is an adventure drama horror directed by Jeannot Swartz, has a 116-minute runtime, rated PG, stars Roy Scheider, Lorraine Gary, and Murray Hamilton. I watched this on DVD. Synopsis. Years after the shark attacks that left Amity Island reeling, Sheriff Martin Brody finds a new trouble lurking in the waters. Mayor Vaughn wants to rid the beach town of the stain on its reputation, but the disappearance of a pair of divers suggests that all is not right. When Sheriff Brody voices his warnings about holding a sailing competition, everyone thinks it is post-traumatic stress. That is, until a shark fin cuts through the water. When I think of sequels, I often think of a cash grab that doesn't really manage to capture the spirit of the original. Once in a while, though, we get a sequel that manages to be a lot of fun and sometimes better than the original. While Jaws 2 isn't as good as the original, it's easily in my top 10 sequels of all time. It had been a few years since I had a chance to see it, so I decided to throw it on. I love the fact they did a little something different with this one. While Sheriff Brody plays an integral part of the film, much of it is about the kids. The young cast does a fantastic job holding their own and making the story work. It feels like a nearly seamless transition from the first film. You're immediately pulled in and are sucked in for the ride. They do some interesting things with Brody's character and the effects his encounters with the shark has had on him. His kids are grown up and seemingly the events of years past have faded from their memories. They are locked into the here and now, their young minds on what most teenagers' minds are on. A good chunk of the characters from the first film return, which makes it that much better. The acting's fantastic, the effects are top-notch, and the music fits perfectly. If you love the first one as much as I do, you should enjoy this one. Is it the original? No, but it does a damn good job of holding its own and is a solid movie in its own right. My rating is an 8 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 5.7 out of 10. Up next, fast forward 5 years to 1983's Jaws 3D.
A creature alive today has survived millions of years of evolution. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine that will attack and devour anything. One terrified you like nothing you have ever experienced when it captured your imagination and tapped your fear like no movie before it. Then, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, two continued the legend and spread the fear. Next summer, nature's most terrifying creature takes on an all-new dimension in an all-new adventure. And for the first time, the terror of Jaws will not stop at the edge of the screen. Jaws 3D. The third dimension is terror.
This is an adventure horror thriller directed by Joe Alves, has a 99-minute runtime, rated PG, stars Dennis Quaid, Bess Armstrong, and Simon McCorkindale. I watched this one on Amazon Prime. Synopsis. After a young great white shark finds its way into a sea-themed park managed by Calvin Bouchard, workers try to capture it, but the facility's attempt to keep the shark in captivity has dire consequences. A much larger mother shark appears in search of its offspring. Among those who must battle the angry aquatic killing machine are marine biologist Catherine Morgan, her co-worker Mike Brody, and a pair of friendly dolphins. This has always been my least favorite entry of the Jaws movies. It has also been quite a while since I last viewed it. I decided to throw it on and give it another view. Every time I swear I'm not going to watch it again, and every time I end up watching it again. I think it's because I forget just how bad it is, and then remind myself upon viewing it that I was right. This is just not a good movie. The acting is fine, but outside of that, it's awful. The effects look terrible, the story is dull, and there's not a whole lot about it that's interesting. This was trying to cash in on the 3D craze, and there's a whole pile of bad, unnecessary 3D type stuff thrown in. Again, 95% of them don't need to even be there. Stupid stuff that looks as though they were thrown in as an afterthought just to make it 3D. As bad as this one is, I'll end up watching it again. Why? To be honest, I have no idea, but I will. My rating is a 2.5 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 3.6 out of 10. And last but not least, 1987's Jaws 4: The Revenge.
Instinctively, man has always been drawn to the sea. Its beauty, its mystery, its secrets. But there is also a vague uncertainty, a sense of intrusion into an alien world, where man is unwelcome and completely at the mercy of the most terrifying predator on Earth. Man's deepest fear has risen again. Jaws, the Revenge. This time, it's personal.
This is an adventure horror thriller directed by Joseph Sargent, has an 89-minute runtime, rated PG-13, stars Lorraine Gary, Lance Guest, and Mario Van Peebles. I watched this on Amazon Prime. Synopsis. The family of widow Ellen Brody has long been plagued by shark attacks, and the unfortunate association continues when her son is the victim of a massive great white. In mourning, Ellen goes to visit her other son, Michael, in the Bahamas, where she meets the charming Hoagie, Newcomb. As Ellen and Hoagie begin a relationship, a huge shark appears off the coast of the island and Ellen's trouble with the great whites begin again. This may be a wildly unpopular opinion, but Jaws 4: The Revenge isn't nearly as terrible as everyone makes it out to be. In fact, I would say it's leaps and bounds better than Jaws 3D. I'm not saying this one is high art or anything like that. Frankly, it isn't a great movie, but when you compare it to Part 3, it has several things going for it that improve things. One, the effects are better. Granted, not by much, but they are still better. The shark still looks a little stiff and fake, but it's an improvement over the cartoony-looking shark from Part 3. 2, it's a hell of a lot gorier, and there's actually stuff going on that doesn't just pertain to cheesy 3D effect shots. 3, the film is flat out shot better. This looks and feels much grander than Part 3. The acting is about the same. 4, this is at least somewhat entertaining where Part 3 is just dull and boring. Yes, the story is still weird and cheesy, but at least it has some moments. Even if those moments aren't for the same reason the director was going for. For me, this one falls into that so bad it's good category, wherein 3 just falls into that dull, boring, bad category. This will always be a fun one to throw on in the summer and enjoy for all the wrong reasons. My rating on this is a 4 out of 10. The average IMDb rating is a 2.9 out of 10. And that's going to wrap up this review cast. As always, I would like to thank my sponsors, the Maine Cannababes. There's a bunch of new stuff going on with them. They just announced the theme for their new calendar, and they will be announcing a new beneficiary shortly. Beneficiary. Yeah, there we go. Having trouble with that word today. Anyway, go to maincannababes.com, and you can find out more information about them. You can see some pictures of this year's models, past models, and some of the causes that they're working on, events they're doing, and all that good stuff. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in, and like I said, I'm still working on putting together the 1-year anniversary episode, which just boggles my mind that I've been doing Average Joe's Driving for a year now. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in, and I'd like to leave you with these words of advice. Remember, kids, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, and I will see you sexy animals on the flip side.
It's intermission. Rise and stretch time. Time to refresh yourself and visit our snack bar. Got a yen for hot popcorn? Your favorite soft drinks are sparkling cold. The juicy Frank sizzling hot. There's delicious coffee, freshly brewed, and all kinds of ice cream and candy to tempt you. Showtime will be announced loud and clear to get you back to your car in time. So stretch your legs. Come to the snack bar now.
Thanks for listening to Average Joe's Drive-In. If you'd like to talk movies or contact the show, add our social media pages. You can add us on Facebook at Average Joe's Drive-In Podcast, on Twitter at TWJ Author, on Instagram at Thomas Washburn Jr. You can also hit up www.thomaswashburnjr.com for more information about the show and related links. If you'd like to support the show, you can buy TJ's books on Amazon. Just type in Thomas Washburn Jr. in the search. Books are available in Kindle and paperback formats. If you have Kindle Unlimited or Prime, you can read the books for free and money will be earned by the pages read. It doesn't cost you anything and it supports the show. Until next time, you've been listening to Average Joe's Drive-In.